Today, the special interview with an IMG who match into ENT. ENT, as you know, is one of the most competitive specialties to get into in the United States, and an IMG made it into that specialty. That's why I brought him here on my YouTube channel to tell you all the secrets about matching into ENT as an IMG. Welcome, Khalil, to the channel.
Yeah, sure. Malka, nice to meet you. So yeah, my name is Khalil Aissa. I'm currently an ENT resident, third-year resident at Duke. I originally come from Lebanon, so I grew up there. I was born and raised there. I went to med school actually in St. Joseph University, which is a French med school. Right after med school, during med school, last 2 years of med school, I decided I have some interest in ENT, so I decided to pursue this. And I always actually knew that I wanted to do my residency in the US. So during med school, I expressed my interest to some of my mentors, some of my med school mentors. They were able to connect me with actually a Lebanese attending here at Duke. So I came in first. I did an observership during, I think, third year of med school. I came in, did an observership. I really liked it. I really liked the place. I liked the department. So I was offered a research position here at Duke. So I finished med school right away. After med school, I came into Duke. I did 2 years of research, and we can go into details about this later on. I did 2 years of research, applied to the match, and ended up staying here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Specialty at Duke is one of the best programs in the country. Now let's talk a little bit about the steps that go into matching, and we'll start with the USMLE exams. Can you give us your thoughts about the importance of Step 2 CK score now, since Step 1 is only pass-fail? And when did you start preparing for these exams?
Yeah, sure. So Step 2 CK score is definitely important. So what I did in my case, I wanted to do all of my STEPS exam, USMLE exams, before I come in and do research. So I can just at least have like all my time free just to focus on research, because I knew how much research was important to match an ENT. So I did all of my step exams, Step 1, 2, CK and CS at the time, during the last year of med school. So now Step 1 is a pass or fail exam, but Step 2 CK, the scores for Step 2 CK are actually important. I don't really think that there is a certain threshold where, like, you know, as international medical grads, you hear a lot of people saying like, yeah, you need the 255 and above to match into that specialty, or you need the 258 and above to match to that specialty. I don't think that's the case. I think if you just have a good score, you show, basically they just want to know that if this applicant has studied for something, he can actually get good grades and he understands what he's doing. So I don't think there's a threshold. You just got to have a good score, and then you just take it from there.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. And I feel that a lot of IMGs are obsessed with 260s and 270s and 280s, and they don't understand that actually after a certain point people don't care. You know, after 250, 255, a lot of programs don't care, and they look at the other stuff that are included in your application.
Exactly. So now you see, if you notice that like all big colleges, universities here in the US are moving away from standardized exams. So for example, SAT is not a requirement anymore in most of the big colleges. So they're moving away from standardized exam because they know that like just one exam, 8 hours, is not going to define who you are. It's not going to define your knowledge, your education. So you just want to show that you have the minimal requirement, and then it's all the other factors.
100%. Even mid school grades now,
right.
Schools are pass and fail without a specific score. So what are these other, we'll talk about research at the end, but what are these other parts of your application that people care about to get an interview?
So like, you know, ENT, plastic surgery, neurosurgery, these are really, really competitive specialties. I think you have to have the minimal USMLE scores. You have to have a really good research background. You have to have also good connections. I'm not talking about like connections for someone that would like just give you an interview, but actually connections with attendings, having worked with them, with residents in the program. This helps a lot. And I think good mentorship throughout your research years is also really, really important.
Exactly. And where does the US clinical experience fit in that picture? Observerships, electives, and what is your recommendation regarding that?
Yeah, so getting a US clinical experience is really, really important. Unfortunately for me, I couldn't get it because I was in a French med school, but it's really important. That was probably a downside in my application, that I didn't have any US clinical experience, a hands-on US clinical experience. I've did 2 observerships, and this definitely helped a lot. So my first observership during med school, the main focus of this observership was to try to secure a research position, not to secure residency. I was too early to apply for residency. I was just trying to secure a way into the American system. So it helped me secure a research position. My second observership that I did, I actually did it during my research years. And when I talked to the program director, he advised me to get at least to do another observership, rotate with the residents, just to show like your attitude, how dedicated you are. And this also helped a lot. But again, the downside of it is I couldn't scrub in cases. I didn't have access to patients' data. So this was a bit frustrating, especially for an applicant who's really wanting to show other residents what he's capable of, but it shouldn't be a limiting factor for you.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I always recommend, if you can secure an elective, which is very challenging for IMGs because you have very limited number of institutions accepting IMGs for electives. You have to have your step 1 ready, and you need to still be a medical student. But if you're successful in securing an elective, you have to be very careful. I've seen, Khalil, a lot of people come in because this is their first rotation ever, and they're supposed to leave a phenomenal impression, but they can't because this is a new system. They don't know how to suture much, and they
exactly
a bad impression that doesn't give them what they were looking for.
Exactly. Were you able to do any clinical US clinical any US clinical experience?
Two electives before I graduated, and they were eye-opening. Especially the first one, to be able to understand the system, suture the way they want. The responsibilities I feel that students get here are actually really good. They give you good responsibilities, especially if you're a 4th-year student. And I've seen IMGs come and rotate at our program that they are not even close to a 3rd-year student. So for those who are trying to do electives and secure electives and come here, make sure first that you're ready for that stage. Study very well, prepare surgically, so you leave a good impression. It doesn't end up hurting you instead of helping you.
Yeah, you have to definitely come prepared if you're doing an elective as an international. You gotta come prepared. At least if you don't have that exposure in your med school, at least watch some YouTube videos. There are a lot of stuff that you can buy online. Try to suture, like suture kit, and just practice.
Awesome. So you've worked with a lot of medical students in your residency. What is your advice of leaving a good impression? What should a medical student do, US or international, to leave a good impression during their away rotation?
I think you cannot expect a lot from medical students on your rotation, but it's more of, for me, it's basically just being proactive. I think proactivity as a medical student is really, really important. Just being dedicated, always being on time, just having the correct attitude around you. Because everyone is gonna learn, everyone is gonna be able, is gonna learn how to suture, is gonna study, read these chapters. But the most important thing is just to show your attitude. So always being on time, being very dedicated, being very proactive, try to help as much as you can, even though you can't be very much helpful sometimes, but at least be there and be ready to help if you're asked to. That's my main advice for med students.
Yeah, these are great tips, and I 100% agree. I feel the knowledge and the surgical skills come way after you establish your personality and how nice you are and you're pleasant to work with and hard work, team player, all these things, the basics.
Yeah, they're gonna come eventually. Don't expect a lot. I know that some attendings, sometimes they start pimping med students. You definitely have to have the basic knowledge and come prepared for the case that you're gonna be observing or working in. But I think mostly showing a good attitude and be pleasant while working with the other residents is really important.
Definitely. Now let's talk about research. What advice do you have for people who are looking for research positions? I feel now things are getting very competitive. A lot of people just send random emails, 1,000 emails, and don't get a response. What is the first thing that we want to discuss about research? How can we get these positions to start with?
So getting these positions is it's very challenging. The only way actually to get them is through connections, through emailing people. And actually, if you do an elective or an observership, that's a way that you gotta use to try to get to secure a research position. But the main thing that I want to talk about is probably you don't really want to, you don't just want a PI, like a principal investigator, someone to work research with, but you really want to look for a mentor, especially if you're an international medical grad. I think mentorship goes much beyond just doing research and someone who's just working on a couple of research projects with you. So you definitely need a mentor who can actively work with you on research, but also like keep in mind that you're an international medical grad, you're coming to the US, you have no idea what's going on, you're outside of the system coming into something completely different to what you've been experiencing for the past years. So you're definitely someone who's been through this, someone who can help you do your best and open up a lot of opportunities for you. So that's an advice for everyone trying to apply to the US for research positions. And if you have like different opportunities, try to look for a mentor, not just someone who's willing to do research with you.
I 100% agree. That is a great advice, because especially for international medical graduates, the idea of a mentor is vague. A lot
Correct.
of
Yeah.
school, a lot of these surgeons and physicians you work with won't even recognize your name. So this idea of mentorship, because everything is based on a score, it doesn't exist much in our world. So I feel identifying a good mentor is the key to match into competitive specialties, or match into competitive programs for even IM or FM. Matching at Harvard with IM is as hard as matching into plastic surgery. So
definitely, yeah.
So finding that mentor is key.
Definitely. And once if you are fortunate enough to find that mentor, once you start doing research, I think you have to be very, as I said before, very proactive. You have to really work hard to get publications out. And I understand sometimes it can be challenging, especially if you're in a basic science research. If you got a basic science research position, because it takes a lot of time for you to get some projects out. Although they are more impactful, more meaningful in terms of research and studies. But when you apply for the match, you have to have at least I'm just coming in with, I'm just making this number up, but I would say probably at least 6, 7, or 8 published articles. And to have these while just working in a basic science lab, that's going to take a lot of time.
Exactly. And I actually recorded the whole course on how to find research positions. And a big portion of that course is identifying what is a good mentor, these characteristics, because you can't work with that person before you start working with them. So you have to have some kind of indicators of what could define a good mentor or not. And I'll leave the link for that course in the description below for these people interested in that course. It's 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you're not happy, we'll give you your money back. Khalil, I want to ask you about that point that you mentioned, clinical versus basic science. I get that question a lot, and I wrote a full blog about that, but I want to hear your thoughts and see what type of research you did. What do you think for people applying to residency? Should they go for clinical versus basic science? Especially that, this is just a thought, the majority of basic science labs are more funded compared to the clinical. So those
Correct.
who are looking for some funded positions, they're more likely to end up in the basic science lab. What are your thoughts about the pros and cons of each?
So I'll start by talking about my experience. So initially when I came into the US and started my research fellowship here, I was just doing clinical research projects with my mentor. But then a few months down the line, it just happened that a new basic science researcher moved into our department, and he just opened up his lab. So I volunteered to work in his lab. So at that time, I was basically doing both basic science research and clinical research. So basic science research until like from 8 till 2, 3 o'clock. And then afterwards, I would just work on my clinical project. So it's really important to have both. I was fortunate enough to have that opportunity to work in both areas. I think doing basic science research is a plus for sure, but you definitely have to do some clinical research to be able to publish and to be able to publish before you apply for the match.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I always tell people, quality matters, but also quantity matters. So people want to see outcomes. You might be working on a Nobel Prize project, but that might get published in like 10 years, but people want to see outcomes. They want to see some papers. So if you're working in basic science, it doesn't hurt to work on some clinical projects to get some papers out. So I get this question a lot about people asking why research is important. Residency at the end of the day is a clinical job, and research is research. If you want to be a researcher, you should have been a PhD student or just a researcher without having to be going into residency. Why is research the pathway now to get into competitive specialties?
So yeah, research is really, really important to get into these competitive specialties, and just to get into any specialty. Nowadays, even applying to internal medicine requires you to have some research background. So first of all, it's research just advances the specialty that you're working at. So for example, studies outcomes, it studies like guidelines, it put in guidelines. Everything is based off of research. And to be able to advance, you need that research. That's the first thing. The second thing is that research is actually like, there's a lot of funding that's going into research. So research is really important for you to come in, get a funded position, and also try to build your connection, try to build your reputation with the mentors that you're working with, or any people that you're doing research with.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think there's the value of research beyond the publications and showing, outcomes. You come here, you work hard, you publish papers, because especially for IMGs, people don't know the system in your country. And this is a way for them to evaluate your real qualifications, your skills, your hard work, and also build your connections. At the end of the day, residency, you'll be working with a lot of people for long hours, especially in surgery. So they want to know whether you're someone who they want to work with, spend hours in the operating room with. And I feel for IMGs, that's mainly the main pathway for them to know you. And even, I don't know in your programs or in the ENT as a specialty, but in plastic surgery, even for US students from top schools, I see them taking research years to do research.
Correct.
How is it the case in ENT?
Yeah. So from my experience from the US med students that I've worked with, probably say like around 60 or 70% of them just take a research year. Yeah, just take a research year because they know how important research is. That's one. And number two is that if you're going to be working in an academic center later on, you need to have that research experience. And us coming in from like international medical schools, we don't have that funding. We don't have, and I'm talking about myself, I'm not sure about other med schools, but in my case, we didn't have that funding. We didn't have, and actually during med school, I didn't really understand the importance of research back then. So we don't have that funding, we don't have that exposure to research. So it gives you first that knowledge, that research experience, and then it just helps you. I mean, if you're just finishing med school from an international medical grad and you want to get into the US system, the only way to get into the US system is by coming in here and doing research. You're not going to start residency right away. You cannot be an observer for years. So you have to build your research experience here.
Yes, I 100% agree. And you mentioned that you didn't have research experience. I had zero publications.
Yeah, same.
From zero, like zero. And that's honestly one of the reasons I built all these research courses that I have now on our website for how to take a research idea to publication, how to do statistical analysis, how to do systematic reviews, because I feel people outside the US deserve the chance to learn about research and publish. And I'm so happy to tell you that a lot of our students who took these courses and they're outside the US, they were able to publish, because it's not rocket science if you have the skills, and they have some cases, some cool stuff in their hospitals that they will be able to publish about. So for anyone who's interested, check the links in the description below that tell you all about how to do research. Now I'm going to talk about interviews. Once you get the interview, it's all about the interview, or a lot of people say there's a huge emphasis on that compared to the rest of the application, because now most people have phenomenal applications and they want to see who's going to be that person that they want to work with. What are your thoughts about the interview? How did you prepare for that? And share with us any tips, especially that now is the interview season.
Sure. So just first, before talking about the interview itself and the preparation for interviews, getting interviews is really hard, especially in competitive specialties, and especially for international medical grads. So usually our applications get filtered out, just because there are so many very competitive US applicants already applying for the match into these specialties. So applications of international medical grads just get filtered out. That's why you need to be very proactive when you're applying for the match. You need to reach out to people, at least just let them read your CV. Let them know what you did, let them know your experience, let them know about you. And then based on this, they'll decide whether they give you an interview or not. So that's the first thing to do. Second is, once you get an interview, and these competitive specialties, you're not going to be getting like 15 or 20 interviews. You're just going to be getting few interviews. And just keep in mind that you only need one interview to match. You really have to work hard to prepare for your interview. So first thing to do is, once you get that interview, you have to look up the department. I'm sure you should have an interest in this department. You have to look up the department. You have to look up at least the program director, the chair, the people that you're going to be interviewing with. You have to look up their research. You have to look up their interest. You have to really know about them. So that's going to give you a long way. That's going to just benefit you a lot during your interview. And for me, I was fortunate enough to have, whenever I did my interview with Duke, I would say it was easier on me. It was easier for me just because like these people I'm interviewing with, I've worked with them for the past 2 years. I've seen them, some of them I've seen them like every day. I've worked with them. Residents, I interviewed with them. I've previously like worked with them for a month. So it made things much easier. So it's definitely, and it's known that like matching into your own institution whenever you're doing research, wherever you're doing research, is much easier than matching somewhere else.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree. And actually, it felt weird the same way for me when I was interviewing at Baylor and some of the MD Anderson faculty that I work with every single day were interviewing.
Yeah.
They were like, what are we going to ask you? Like, we already...
Exactly. And I had this a lot during my interview with Duke, where that would like be, by then there's like 2 or 3 minutes where you would ask questions about the program, and everyone was like probably more than us about this program. So
there is not much to ask. Yeah, I 100% agree that preparation is key. Research the program is key. You need to know something about these people before you go in. We have a ton of free resources for people watching this video on our blog. I have a blog of over 200 questions that you commonly get asked about. I have a full guide that we published recently. We have questions that you can ask program directors and residents at the end, and a ton of other YouTube videos. I'll leave the link for that in the description below. And if you need one-on-one advice from someone who matches into residency, that is key, to prepare with someone who's knowledgeable. So if you're someone who has a mentor, who is knowledgeable with the process, prepare with them at least 1 to 2 hours to see if you're on the right path. And if you don't have that someone, we have a ton of phenomenal advisors. You can check the list of our advisors and their bios, and we trust them so much that if you don't like the session, we'll just give you your money back. So check out our interview preparation services. Make sure you prepare with someone who's experienced, because interviews are extremely important. So Khalil, now
this is key, and I just wanted to add that it's really, really important to prepare with someone. I really admire what you're doing, and I definitely recommend everyone to subscribe in this and use it, because I remember back then I had to like zoom in with my friends, and I would give them actually some behavioral questions to ask me, and I would just practice over Zoom with them. So it's really important to have someone to practice with.
Definitely agree. Khalil, now we want to wrap things up. I want to have you summarize what you think are the keys or the main things that an applicant should consider if they're now sitting in their country, in Lebanon or India or Pakistan or Egypt or wherever, they want to match ENT. What should they do to have a shot at this specialty?
So I would say before coming in, it is one of the hardest decisions that you're going to be taking in your life, because it's a really risky decision. Because you come in here, you're coming into the unknown, a different system, a US system that's different than yours. You come in seeking to match in one of in really competitive specialties. So it's not going to be an easy path. So you have to know before coming in here that it's going to be hard. You're going to have very hard days. You're going to have a rough path. But eventually, I really think that if you put in all the work, if you have the right attitude, you put in all the work, the hours, and you really work hard for it, I feel that eventually things are going to work out. But yeah, it's not easy. It's never easy. I mean, I'm in residency right now, and I'm so happy that I'm in residency in the US. But I can remember that I had I do remember that I had really, really bad days during research, and especially before the match. Like the stress level was really, really intense. So just come prepared. It's going to be a rough path, but I think at the end it's definitely worth it. If you're applying for a competitive specialty, you have to put in extra work. You have to put in the extra efforts. And just also keep in mind, I get a lot of these messages where people are applying for like ENT without any research experience in the US, or without even experience in the US. So I just tell people, like, there is no way that you can match by applying from your country to the US and to ENT, or probably any other specialties right now, because everything is becoming much more competitive. So you definitely have to have research experience in the US, at least 2 to 3 years. You have to be very proactive. You have to be very productive during these years. And you have to build a lot of connections and relations with your mentors, with the people from the department, and with the residents.
Thank you so much, Khalil, for this extremely insightful interview. For our viewers, if you need one-on-one advice with an expert like Khalil, go ahead and schedule a consultation on our website through our residency advising service. Our residency advising is 100% satisfaction guarantee, which means if you're not satisfied, we give you your money back. And now if you found any value in this video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell sign so you get notified whenever I post future videos on my YouTube channel related to the match process and USMLE. And before you go, make sure to check out the interview I recorded with an IMG who matched into categorical general surgery at Johns Hopkins, and you can watch it by clicking on the link here. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and good luck on your journey.